Hello viewers, I am CA Venugopal, delighted to welcome you for the third GST Simplified Education series. In this series, we are going to look at if you are auditing the implementation of GST, what are the steps you would have to take care. And for those who are getting ready for moving to GST, what is the checklist you need to have from the technology perspective or the implementation of GST. Let's move on. So let's begin with the GST audit. And there are 4 steps you have to consider yourself whenever you are auditing the GST implementation successfully. Basically in GST we are saying there's a seamless credit happening. So you have to check whether the transactions are capable of capturing all these credits seamlessly, be it detection of missing credits or corrections or any compliance related. So the steps involved in the GST auditing is verification of the configurations, various configurations, and verification of the transaction recording, verification of transaction reconciliation at source, verification of transaction reconciliation post reporting. So when it comes to configuration, we are looking at configuration of company masters. So all the relevant records which are needed for the GST at the master level, be it the company name or the company GST NID, and all the masters of the company have been properly set up. The next comes is the relevant ledgers. What are the outward supply and inward supply ledgers in the GST, and all the tax ledgers and other relevant records have been properly set. And in GST, stock items are very critical. So have you ensured whether the proper HSN codes have been configured to the stocks, so the relevant unit of measures have been captured. And here comes the party ledgers, both customers and vendors. Have they been properly classified as B2B, B2C, and B2B, whether they have captured the GSTN ID. Lastly, tax ledgers. The relevant tax rates and tax ledgers, have they been configured. Moving on to recording of transactions. In the GST and GST audit, you have to look at whether the transactions, especially with regards to outward supply, have they been necessarily classified as specified under GSTR 1. So be it B2B, B2C large, B2C small, or supply through e-commerce, or supplies attracting reverse charge mechanism, in case where the place of supply is different, so especially bill to ship to classifications. So whether all such transactions have been properly getting captured. When it comes to input credit, is the eligible and ineligible credits have been properly classified and recorded. The tax rate which is applicable to the transaction has been properly classified. Lastly, whether the tax base, be it IGST, CGST, or whatever the tax rate which tax classification needs to be applied, has it been properly defined basis place of supply. Nextly, when we are auditing, we also look at the reconciliations which are happening at the source. Now these reconciliations happening at the source is validation of the transactions as and when it is happening. So are the configurations are enough to validate the transaction? Even if someone is making a wrong classification, are there alerts mentioned? Is there a detection mechanisms for all these exceptions? Is there a method where there in which a seamless corrections that can happen? And lastly, the filing softwares, either it is an external or internal to the software, has it been properly configured to capture the necessary transactions required for the filing. Once the reconciliation is done, there are post-reconciliation reporting procedures. Especially what we are talking about is mismatches in GSTN. So the records which GSTN is maintaining, the registers, liability ledgers, all those ledgers, are they reconciling with the books of accounts? So especially whenever there are a 2A auto-populated transactions, are they getting reconciled with your purchase register? And whenever there are corrections appearing in the sales register by way of 1A, is it matching to your outward supply? And do you have a method to capture all the exceptions, either additions made, deletions, modifications? And lastly, the balances in various ledgers maintained by the GSTN is matching with your own records. Now, anyone who is doing audit of any application of GST, so to check whether the configurations are correct, you have to broadly check in on those parameters. Now, come 1st July, we are moving to GST. Those who are implementing GST, you have to ensure whether the following things are done at your system. So, we begin with the basic configurations of the provisions of the GST, be it the rates, be it the tax masters, everything has those configurations are done in the system. The second thing, are the staff trained to the various applicable provisions of the GST? And in the new system there is a software changes, the usage of the new software, have the staff been trained? Are the suppliers whom you are dealing with, are they using a GST compliant software? I know in GST vendor has a crucial role to play. If the vendor is not compliant, the cost of procurements are going to go up very high. So you better be careful. Have you collected all the GSTNs from your suppliers? So if your suppliers has multiple GSTNs, have you collected and configured into your system? Same goes with your customers. If your customers have one or multiple GSTNs, have you obtained it and configured to your system? Have you configured all the rates, the product codes into the software? Have you configured the stock movement whenever happening between the branches which has separate GSTN, the tax liability implications and interbranch transfer with the GST liability? Is that been configured? Have all chart of accounts have been lined up with the new GST masters and ledgers for filing? So is the ledgers created sufficient enough which can help in filing your GSTR 1 and 2? Do you have established process which enables you to match the input credit and the output liability? Has the GSTN software been integrated with your books of accounts whenever you are using a third party software? If you are using a software of your own ERP, have you ensured that this software generates the returns bifurcating for each state separately? Wherever there are ISD credits distribution, have you ensured the software is classifying them and able to identify to which all branches such credits needs to be distributed? And you have to ensure the anti-profiteering measures to pass on credit. How much sales price has to be to the end customer considering the revised rates between the earlier regime to the new regime? Lastly, entire GSTN works with technology. Is your software configured to reconcile with the data maintained by the GSTN software? So viewers, these are the broad checklists for you to check whether you are ready for the GSTN.